Hey guys, Whitney here and welcome to TEFL Pros. On today's call, I sat down with our recent grad, Christopher. And now Christopher's experience might seem familiar to some of you out there. He shares on this call that he had been contemplating getting TEFL certified for almost a decade. He's a professional, he's been working in his career for several decades now, but he knows that in the future, he wants something different for his life. And that may include moving to another country and finding new career opportunities. So if this sounds familiar, if you can relate to that story, I suggest you sit back, relax, and listen to Christopher's experience on the TEFLPros Plus course. Hey, Christopher.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. The sun is out. I'm looking out above my monitor. Finally, we've had a lot of rain lately.
Are you out on the West Coast right now?
I am. I'm in Tacoma, Washington.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, here in North Carolina, I'd like to say that it's very springy, but I just saw that they're predicting snow tomorrow. So
in April?
Yeah.
My parents said the same thing in Ohio, and the snow came back again. And I'm like, I don't get it. We had below 30 weather a few weeks ago. And I'm like, I don't get it.
I know. Yep. You're like, where's spring? Where's spring?
That was part of the reason why I went to Mexico for 2 weeks to chill out from work and get some heat. Nice. It was 80 degrees and sunny for a solid 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it was really nice and relaxing.
Oh,
in fact,
good.
That's when I finished up my TEFL.
Oh, really? Okay.
In Puerto Vallarta.
Well, on that note, congratulations on graduating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience. I really ran out the clock a little bit there, but not completely.
No. You still had months left, but yeah.
I did. It was a good summer. Last summer it was a good project to start.
Yeah.
I shared with you in the past, it was a good, the pandemic is ending, but I need another project to keep busy while things are still opening up because there's nothing to do. And this has been on my mind for ages, and this is the time to do it. So I embarked on all the classroom stuff in the summer, and then work took off, crazy work schedule. And it actually took all the way until early March.
Which is totally fine. We keep it flexible for a reason, because hey, most people are adults with jobs and responsibilities, and sometimes life, it just can get in the way of maybe the first plan that we have. We have to go to plan B.
Plan B.
It's totally fine. That's totally fine. So, thanks for taking some time, first off, just for hopping on and sharing your thoughts on the course. We really appreciate it. I know you mentioned just now that, you kind of got into your TEFL as a way to transition, out of the pandemic. You needed something to work on last summer. Where were you at prior to taking the course? How would you kind of describe your life at that point?
Definitely looking for a change. I mean, I have a great job now, but like many people might say, there's tedium in all jobs, but honestly, I've been in government services for a couple of decades. Up to 25 years. And, I was thinking about opportunities for change a long time ago. And even after grad school, when I finished graduate school with my master's in public policy, it was 2012. And, I was in Minnesota at the Humphrey School, and the economy was still crashing, and policy analysts were not being asked for, right? The GAO was shut down for no interns for, I think they didn't open it up until 2014 even, or later. So it was very disappointing. And, that was my midlife crisis, was to go get a graduate degree, because I was been interested in public policy for a long time.
Okay.
And my bachelor's is political science and economics, and I loved grad school, but it just wasn't materializing after earning the graduate degree. And I'm like, well, what are other options? I've always thought about living abroad. I enjoy travel. And I started at some point, I think it was 2014, and I was getting ready for being laid off. They had announced layoffs at the one job I had. And I found Nomadic Matt. I picked up his book To Travel the World and was looking at their listings for TEFL because I was thinking, well, I'm a government service guy. I'm not an IT coder. So it's really hard to go take my skills somewhere. And this is 2014. So it's a little before the nomadic surge that we are seeing today. But I've been thinking about it for a long time. And I'm finally in a place, after some ups and downs because of the economy, it's like, oh, I can start building, a path towards this. And it's like, I might not be ready yet just to launch into this, but this is the great time to get the TEFL done. And that's when I went back to Nomadic Matt and the websites and started looking at, well, in 2021, who are they recommending today? Because it changes over time a little bit. And Kelta, and some of them are really restrictive programs. You have to be somewhere else. And it was like, well, I can't do that. Or super duper expensive. And it was the pandemic. So there wasn't going to be any in-class experience, but who's offering something similar. So I was looking at all of it, and then we had a discussion about it, and I was thinking about it, and then eventually I just bit off on it and said, this is the project for summer 2021, and I need to get this out of the way. And I don't know when the future make this happen because I don't know what's happening with the pandemic and countries, different country policies.
Yeah.
So, boom.
So
I hope I answered your question. I think I went somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate where you're coming from with that, Christopher, because I do think that, getting your TEFL is in that preparatory stage,
right,
for moving overseas. And a lot of times, I think even just kind of given the state of the world right now, like transitioning out of the pandemic, different world events that are happening right now, a lot of times people might feel nervous to even get started on their TEFL because they're not certain like where they could go or where they would feel comfortable going, or if they just want to be online. And I appreciate the fact that you were like, well, I thought about it for a decade, and I'm like, let's just get the TEFL, let's tick that box, because that could take a few months of hard work just to get that piece done. And then I can reevaluate what is the state of the world now, and what would I like as my next step. I think that's kind of the only way you can approach it, but sometimes it's just really hard to kind of take that step.
It is hard. And now I'm doing the step of, okay, I'm stepping out of the pandemic. I need to re-wake my body and mind. I can start looking forward to things again. So what is that? I need to re-energize. It really is a different mental effort, when before it's like, oh gosh, I just want to do something different. I need to get there. But I've shared with you in the past, I'm a little more risk averse than I used to be. So I want to lay the path. I don't want to jump into a country and get the TEFL later, or, I just want to have some preparatory work done. And I don't know. And I like that you had classroom viewings attached to your program.
Yeah. So when you were searching for your TEFL, I know you mentioned you really liked Nomadic Matt and kind of following his recommendations, which is great. I think it's always great when you kind of resonate with folks who have kind of been there, done that, and you can, get some, I'm trying to think, what do they call it? Kind of some grains of wisdom or insight. Yeah.
And I looked up each one, I was looking at the top 5 or top 10, and I'll open them all up and look for reviews on all of them, go to somebody else's website, like Go Abroad or somewhere else, and see, well, who are they listing? Because they'll list more than one that they like and give pros and cons. And so I just kept doing it. And my personal situation I'm here in Washington State. I'm not going to go travel somewhere. I can't. And, what are the tick boxes? And the 120 hour is very important.
Yep.
And access, some type of access to classroom experience is really important, especially in the pandemic. You're not going to get it. So what's the next best thing? And it seemed like your group then just came to the top for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, then you hop into the course, you
Right.
start actually, digging in there and like learning how to be a teacher. So what was
Right.
that experience like? Just give us your thoughts.
Yeah, actually, I was kind of nervous because, the reason I did the TEFL is because I haven't done teaching before, not this type of teaching. I've done presentations, either through grad school or work. And I've done, and I taught SharePoint, right? Early days SharePoint, and did instruction with a class and prepared the materials. It was very organic experience. And learned all the best practices and all that stuff. So I have been in front of people before for different reasons, but this is about, and I shared with you in other times. I've taken language myself, so I've been on the other end numerous times, either with French or Korean. I can't remember how many other language, Latin.
Oh, wow.
Let's skip Latin. So that was high school. Anyway, but when I just didn't know how to do a lesson plan. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I remember sharing in one of our weekly calls, I'm like, I thought it would be this huge paper, lots of detail. And what you guys really emphasized was, whoa, simpler is better. Step back, look at this, and look how it's re-emphasized the same material in different ways so that you're reinforcing it using different skills. And I think that was an eye-opener experience, because part of me was a little fretting. Oh, I'm a new person. I'm going to go to some other country and they may or may not have material. I have to use it if they have it. But am I going to have time to develop lessons from scratch? Because I was thinking it'd be onerous, like huge, bulky, like you see when we're in high school ourselves, and you see the lessons plan that they had, from this, I'll date myself, from the 80s, but these were not that. And, the emphasis in part was be flexible, but here's the ideas. This is what the emphasis is. And I'm like, oh, that is very relieving. I think I expressed that to you during the lessons in July of 2021. And I was like, oh, wow, that was eye-opening. Yeah. So I'm very thankful, and that you went through it and then have a number of classroom examples of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad that those were helpful for you. Yeah. It's hard to have perspective. Like when you've never taught before and right. You got these 120 hours and you got to pop out the other end and be right. able to, go into a classroom and function and be effective, not just survive, but like hopefully convey some wisdom, some English, to your students. It's a lot to take in, and I totally get what you're talking about. It's like just trying to frame the concept of lesson planning from the get-go. That is one of those
lesson planning, but different kind of lesson planning for the different lessons, right?
The different skills,
different productive, the skills, right? Reading, listening, and speaking. I remember all of them. Writing.
Yes, we talked a lot about writing on coaching calls. I remember that. You had good questions about that.
I don't remember now, but thank you.
Oh my goodness. Well, one funny thing, Christopher, that I feel like we have to share is that prior to this call, we were chatting about your Korean language studies. And now that you've completed your TEFL, what has that been like for you?
Well, right. So, early in the pandemic, I was doing Korean to be busy, and it was all online. And that teacher was pretty good. I was following it. And then I was following her because I started it again with her. And I was like, oh, I see what she's doing. She's doing a different lesson. And then we're going to do something that's more interactive. And I'm not saying she was modeling what TEFLPros was doing it, but I saw the differences in approach. And I liked it. It's like, oh, here's engagement, here's listening to what she wants to convey. She is following a script. But when teaching came back to be in person, it was a bit of a fiasco because they couldn't place people in the right classes. But what was startling is I went to a community college for a formal Korean class in the evening, and they just picked up with the cohort right in the middle of where they left off with their first quarter. There were the briefest of introductions, like this, and like more of like an attendance checkoff list. And then, well, this is where we left off. Let's just read it together. Boom, 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 boom. And it was not welcoming. And then go off into your little class with your group, which is a nice feature in Zoom. But literally people that were already in the course, like, I don't know what we're supposed to do right now. Let's make it up. And, they took the lead, and then we went through and practiced saying a Korean sentence and rudiments. And then we got brought back in, and it was just, I never felt comfortable. And it was obvious that she was just focused on the cohort and just pushing it through as grammarian. And it was cold. And I'm looking for a substitute because the other school was a little disorganized, and I still like the other school, but it was really disconcerting. And I remember feeling that way when I was taking French as a younger person, that it was just kind of imposing, like, do it this way or else. That's, how I always felt. It's like, well, where's the opportunity to learn? Like, engage me. It's okay to make a mistake.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that at all. So yeah, I'm really, the vids to emphasize the classroom lesson, the lesson planning really helped to show the engagement and the patience and the dynamic that's supposed to be supportive, and that the lesson plan is reiterated only in a different way so that people can learn the vocabulary by practicing. It's like in the lesson.
Radical, right?
Right, radical. I mean, you can always send homework home, but it's not practice. Anyway, so
that memorization-based approach instead. Yeah.
Right, and that's just one facet. So no, I could totally see this time. I could totally see this difference, and I just felt so left out. I'm older now and have a lot of coping skills, but I was sweating. I actually had a little panic. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm like, why am I thinking this? This is not good.
But it's so fascinating though to have these experiences, like especially coming out of a language teacher training where you're like, we've had folks recently on coaching calls, like making comments like, yeah, when I take my language class now, I'm like assessing my teacher's lesson planning and classroom management, because it just starts percolating in your brain. And it's great though to be able to tie in, like, how do I feel as a learner when a lesson is presented in this way versus this other way, and
when your mind gets caught up and I can't keep up, you get stuck. You're not listening. I'm not listening anymore. I'm panicking, I'm like, where are we? I don't get what's going on. So I'm already behind. I'm not getting anything out of it. So I'm lost. And that's a lost lesson.
Yeah. And that's why, we kind of jokingly say things like, hey, when you're doing, like when we're learning classroom management skills, unfortunately we can't ask, do you understand? We good? You understand? Like you can't ask those things because people panic, right? People panic. They're like, yep, I'm good. Everything is totally fine here.
Question.
Yeah.
And that they're good, so you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. So then we've really got to dig in as a teacher in that environment and build the rapport and learn other ways of, assessing the class. So yeah, I think it's great though that you've had these experiences as a language learner as you've been going through your TEFL training. That's just invaluable, honestly.
Yeah, no, it's really cool to see the difference. Now, how to do it as then the instructor and make sure, okay, I'm the patient one And
Yes.
I'm trying to foster that environment, or navigate those insecurities. It's like, I remember, okay, take your own breath. You don't have to push the lesson.
You'll do great. You'll do great. So I got one last question for you, Christopher. You know it's coming. I always like to ask people, what advice would you give to someone if they were like, Christopher, I don't know, like I'm on the fence. I don't know about this whole, teaching abroad, teaching online, getting a TEFL. I just don't know. What advice would you give them?
Well, there's two things. First, are you really interested in living abroad? Because that's a whole separate topic. Are you comfortable? Do you feel safe? Do you trust your skills to navigate newness, adventure, and risk? These are things that ought to be explored because you want to be comfortable. And the other part about the TEFL is to do the research. And you don't have to do 7 years of research like I did off and on, getting familiar, double checking. I mean, it helps because you can see the changes in who is being recommended for certificate programs, and accreditation matters because there's not a uniform accreditation approach. So you have to be looking at who's describing what. So in these circumstances for the certificate, triaging references is key. So do the work. You have to research the people, the organizations like TEFLPros or the Celtic, is it Celtic program?
Celta.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And and the other ones. So go to the main websites that have a reputation for travel as a lifestyle or living abroad, teaching ESL. Where ESL is the primary way people earn a living to be abroad.
Yeah.
And look it up, and then I'd say go for it. If you're really interested in it, then like we were talking earlier, it's like, I have no reason not to do this now. It's the end of the pandemic. I'm not going anywhere. This is the time to get this done and lay that that groundwork for my future choices. And that's exactly how I approached it. It's like, just do it. I have my summer available, do the lessons, learn it, and be thinking about it. And then when I'm done, it's like I'm going to be in a new position to be thinking about the next perspectives and things to do. So it's homework. Do the homework on both items, and then you're not going to lose anything, right? So just dive into it so you have that new experience to apply to your next decision making.
Excellent advice, Christopher. Thanks so much for joining us.
I hope so.